Okay, so we are picking up on Ches Amud Aleph at the bottom. The Gemara was talking about, we have like one more, like today we're going to finish off Zav and Shemeres Yom Keneged Yom, and then we're going to do Mitzora, and then next week we get into Haggadah Gemara for 3-4 weeks, or 2 weeks maybe, whatever. Anyway, so the Gemara was questioning, we were going through the halacha of a Zav, and we said that a Zav, that if a Zav has 2 emissions, and we said that he has to go to the mikveh for 7 days. So the Gemara is asking now, he says, why do you have to have a pasuk that tells you that if a Zav has 2 emissions, that therefore he now has to go to the mikveh for 7 days? The Gemara says, starting with the halol dinhu, we can make a kal v'chomer to tell you that of course he's going to have to go to that he would have to go to the mikveh. Why? Because the Gemara says, because we said that a Zav has a special Tuma power that it has, that if a Zav sits on the top of 10 mattresses, so if he just sits on the top one, he doesn't even touch any of the other ones, all 10 of them are going to be Tameh. So the Gemara says, if the Zav has this power that he's able to be Metameh by sitting on top of a mattress, and he's going to make the other 9 mattresses underneath the Tameh, so of course he's going to have to go to the mikveh. It's logical that he's going to have to do that. So turning to Chasim Abayz, the Gemara says, Shemeres Yom Keneged Yom Tochiach. No, because we'll bring you a raya from Shemeres Yom Keneged Yom. The halacha is that a woman, there's certain times of the month that she's not able to become a nida, even if she sees blood. So during those days, if she sees blood during those days, there's 11 days that can happen. So if during those 11 days, if she sees blood, so it's called Shemeres Yom Keneged Yom, which means that normally we say that if a woman when she gets her period during her regular cycle, so she has 7 days that she counts, that we say that we check for the dam until it's done, and then and the Ams has 5 days, and then she counts 7 days, and she goes to the mikvah. When it's during those 11 days that she cannot become a nida, even though it may still be that she sees blood. So the halacha she shemeres yom keneged yom, that she sees 1 day that she doesn't see dam anymore, she can go to the mikveh right away. She doesn't have to count. She doesn't have to count 7 days. Okay, so the Gemara says we're going to prove from Shemeres Yom Keneged Yom that because she also has this power of Tumah, that if she's sitting on the top of a bunch of cushions or pillows or mattresses, and she's on the top one and she doesn't touch the other ones, they're all going to become Tameh just like a Zav does. It's considered her Zav period that she's going through right then. So we see that she has to go, that she has this power to be Metameh Tumas Mishkav Moshav, and still we say that she has to count 7 days. So the same thing, we're going to say a Zav should have to do it. So therefore the Gemara says, mix a Zav over Safar, that only a part of it he's going to have to do. Limit al Zav Bal Shtei Riyos Shetan Sfira Shiva. So therefore we say you can't learn from a Kal V'chomer, because you see from the Shemeres Yom Keneged Yom. So therefore, by the same token, we need to have the pasuk to tell you that the Zav, when he sees it, that he's going to have to a Zav of seeing 2 times, that he's going to have to count Shiva before he's going to do it. And again, the whole period of the whole thing that the Gemara is trying to do now, remember, the Mishnah is saying that there's no difference between a Zav that sees twice to a Zav that sees 3 times, except that a Zav that sees 3 times, you count, and then you bring a carbon, and if it's 2 times, then they count and they don't bring a carbon. But everything else is going to be the exact same. That's all the Gemara is trying to do right now to prove that out. The Gemara says, so he says, so Abai said to Rava, so Rav Papa said to Abai, Maishna Chaim Izovo, the Arbi Lezav, Val Shtei Rios, Maishna Hai Zovo, the Mai Val Shtei Rios. We had 2 psukim that said the word Zov in it. The first pasuk we said was going to tell you that you're going to include that a Zav that sees that has 2 emissions, so he has to count 7 days. That was an inclusion that we did. Then we said the next pasuk that said the word Zovo was an exclusion, because it was saying that you're going to that even though if he sees 2, if he has 2 emissions, he counts 7 days, but he does not bring a carbon. So the Gemara asks, why in one do you use the word Zovo to include, and why in the other one do you use the word Zovo to exclude? How do you know to make a differentiation to say include versus exclude? Gemara answers, Amar Le, because if you really want to say that it was going to exclude, so really lishto kramine, so the pasuk shouldn't have said the word Zov at all. So the fact that it did, it must be that it was trying to tell you that one is going to be coming for an inclusion and one's coming to come for an exclusion. And the Gemara is just going to say like we did before, maybe we're going to make a kal v'chomer like we did, that because he's Metameh Tumas Mishkav Moshav, so therefore, so for sure he should have to count 7 days. So Gemara says, Shomer Hashem Keneged Yom Tochiach, like we said before, that this woman that sees, the woman that's a Nida, who's not a Nida, I shouldn't say that. The woman who bleeds is considered to be a Zava, that she only has to count one day, and we said before, but she still can be Matame, Tumas Mishkav Moshav, and she still has to count 7 days. So maybe you're going to say, like we said before, maybe you said we're going to learn out from the pasuk. We said that a person can be matame, that if someone, we said like he won the Grand Slam, he won the lottery, he was a zav, and he also was a mitzora. So we're telling you that a person is able to start counting for the zav toma, even if he's still going to be mitzora. And again, the advantage would be because he's not going to be matame Tumas Moshav Mishkav. So where it says, "Im kain lichtav krav v'chiyitar zav v'lishtok shedeket kwam zav v'lamali limit al zav shtei bal riyos limit al zav bal shtei riyos shaton tzvira shiva." Therefore, telling you, like we said before, again, that if someone sees that if a zav sees two emissions, so he's going to count 7. And then he goes to the mikvah and he's tahar, as opposed to someone that sees 3, that he counts 7, and then he has to bring a korban, and then he's going to be tahar also. Okay, that is it for zav. Now we're going to get into mitzora, which is, again, it's just a few lines, and then we're going to be done. Which it took, I had to get this whole thing straight. So a mitzora, the halach is a mitzora is someone who sees. If they see like a spot on their skin, let's say they see a white spot on their skin, so the halacha is that for the mitzora, there's one of 2 things that can happen. First of all, only a kohen can tell someone that he's going to be a mitzora. Like you could have the biggest gadol hadar can be sitting there, who's a Yisrael, and you could say that he's mitzora. It doesn't mean anything. You take him to the gadol hadar, the gadol hadar will say to the kohen who doesn't know anything, he's tamei, and then that's it. But it has to be the kohen that's going to declare him tamei. So if a person has these spots on his skin, so the halacha is that he goes to the kohen. The kohen can either say it's not a mitzora, and he just goes back and he goes living his life, or he says that he's tamei, he's a mitzora, and then he has to do the halachas of mitzora. Or the third one is going to be that it's muskar. We're not sure what this person is. We don't know if he's mitzora or not. So he has to go through what's called a quarantine period. He goes for 7 days, then the kohen comes back and he checks him out and he says either, again, same thing, tahar, tamei, or possibly he does another 7-day cycle, and then after the 7 days, if nothing else changes, then he's going to be tahar. So this Mishnah is just going to tell us what the difference is between a mitzora, and he calls them a mitzora muskar and a mitzora muchlat. A mitzora muskar, again, is one that we know that he's a mitzora, and a mitzora muchlat is that it's a question, he's confined, and the Mishnah calls him a mitzora muchlat, but it's possible that he's not a mitzora, but that's what it calls him. So the Mishnah says, and again we're just continuing along this theme of there's no difference between one and the other except for no difference between A and B except for C. There's no difference between a mitzora that is a definite mitzora versus a mitzora that is a quarantine mitzora, ela priya uprima, except for the fact that when someone is a confirmed mitzora, the halach is that they have to let their hair grow. They're not able to cut their hair. They have to let their hair grow long, and they have to tear their clothes. Okay, that's if you're a confirmed mitzora, that's what you do. Ein bein tahar mitoch, as opposed to a questionable mitzora, that doesn't have to do that. And ein bein tahar mitoch haskul tahar mitoch achlet teglachas v'tziparim. And the only difference between a mitzora that becomes tahar because he's declared tahar, meaning he finished his whole mitzora process and now he's tahar, versus a mitzora that was a questionable mitzora. The only difference between the two is that when a definite mitzora finishes his process, he has to cut his nails and he's supposed to shave his hair, and he brings a carbon with 2 birds, and a questionable mitzora does not do that. So Gemara says, but as far as the shiluach, meaning that the halach is that if someone's a mitzora, they have to go outside the walls of Yerushalayim. They cannot stay within the walls of the city. So whether they are a definite mitzora or a questionable mitzora, questionable is maybe the wrong word. Maybe it's a waiting mitzora, like you're in a wait and see period. What? No, they don't. And actually the Gemara is going to talk about that. But no, they don't. So Zev is Hashavim, but they're identical in that in that both mitzoros, whether they are in waiting to see what happens or they're definite, they have to leave the city. And also, as far as tuma goes, that the halacha is with the mitzora. If he walks into a house, he makes the entire house tameh. So they have that. They contain that same tameh even when we're waiting to see what's going to be happening. Gemara says, how do we know that if you have a waiting to see that he does not have to he can let his hair grow, and he doesn't have to let his hair grow, and that he's able to, and he doesn't have to tear kriya. Gemara says, the Tani Rav Shmuel bar Yitzchak kamed Rav Huna v'tiar hakom mispachas hi v'chives begara v'taher. That when this is talking about now when the Kohen's coming after the 7-day period of the question, he wasn't sure if he was a mitzvah or not. So the Kohen comes and he checks out to see what's going to be happening, and he says, you know what? It's not mitzvah. It's not tzaras. Okay, it's just like some sort of skin disease he has. So we say that. So we say that he says that vitar that he's going to be tahir. What does that mean? Tahar mipriya umipriya demeikara, that he is pure from even having to let his hair grow and from tearing kriya. So Gemara says. Because the point is that it should. Okay, so Amalei Rabba, the Rabba says Elama'ata Gabi Zav Dichsiv V'chibetz Begad V'Taher, because let me back up. The pasuk should have said the pasuk said V'Taher, which means that he is tamei. It should have said v'yitar, that he will be tamei. Why I say v'tar? It implies that v'tahir means he was always tahar. V'yitar means he's always tahar. That there was never a time that he wasn't. So therefore, the questionable mitzora doesn't have to let his hair grow long and doesn't have to tear kriya. So Gemara, and we're learning out from the word that it said in the pasuk v'tahir. So Gemara says, Amalei Rabbi asked a question. If so, elama'ata gabizav dichsiv v'chibes begad v'tahir. It says that same word v'tahir. What does that mean? So hasamai v'tahir me'ikarika. What can you possibly have that was tahar by the zav? The zav, there's no question that everything was tamei. Okay, that goes without saying that everything was tamei. So ela tahar hashta milutami klicharas ela tahar hashta milutami klicharas behasid. So you have to say that what's it talking about? It's talking about that there's a halacha that if a zav causes a vessel to move, then he makes it become tamei. So we're telling you that afagav the hadar chazi, that even though let's say that the person was a zav and it was time for him to go to the mikveh now. Okay, so and we said okay, he's tahor, nothing's going on right now, and he touched this kli, he touched this vessel, and then what happened after he touched it? Then he had another mission, and it turns out that he's going to become tamei again. So Gemara says, "Afagav the hadar chazi." Even though later on, that before he went to the mikvah, he had another mission, which means that he's tamei now. He never became totally pure yet. So Gemara says, "Lo mitami l'mafrei." We don't go back retroactively. That's what V'tahir is teaching you when it comes to zav. Hachanami. So here too, tahar hashim l'tami v'ila mafreya. Here too, it's telling you that the tamei l'mafreya is that if, let's say, we find out by this mitzora that this mitzora muchlot, that we're not sure, this mitzora muskar, that we're not sure what his status is, that we say we don't go back retroactively when he enters the house, that he's not going to make it tamei. So Gemara says, so therefore that's what we use the pasuk for. So Gemara comes back, and again it's just trying to find out how do we know that the mitzora. I got to get the word straight, that the mitzora muskar is going to be pater from having to let his hair grow long and from tearing kriyas. My answer is El Amar Rav Mehacha. We learn from here. It says in the pasuk v'hatzarua asher bo hanaga, which says the word in the naga, which uses the word bo. Misha tzaraso tluya begufo yatzazeh shein tzaraso tluya begufo el biyamim. That it's talking about there's either he can become tahar because the days have passed when he was done, or he can become tar because he needed a refuah. He had to wait until the tzara healed. So the mitzora muchlat, which was a definite mitzora, he has to wait until he has this refuah, until he's going to be cured from the tzaras. The mitzora muskar, who was we were waiting to see what was going to be happening with him. So it does not fall on him the requirement to let his hair grow long and to tear kriya. Amalei Abai, so Abai said to him, Elama'ata. That we says that every day that the tzaras is in him, he's going to be tamei. So misha tzarasu tulei begufo hu deton shliach. Maybe we're going to learn from there that only someone who's waiting for for the body to heal, he's the one that has to leave the city walls. And the one who's not waiting to be healed, but he's just waiting to find out, to get definite clarification whether or not the spots were actually tzaras or not, he does not have to leave the city. So Gemara says, maybe you're going to say that is the case, that there's a difference, that the mitzorah that is waiting to get clarification on the tzaras, that he doesn't have to leave the city walls. Baktani, that can't be, because we learned we just learned in our mission that the only difference between the two of them is that the definite mitzorah has to let his hair grow and has to tear kriya. But as far as leaving the city walls go, they both have to leave the city walls. They can't stay within the city. But as far as leaving the city and as far as making a house tummy when they walk into it, they're going to be equal. When it says Amarle Yemei call Yemei, because it could have said in the pasuk Yemei, it says call Yemei. So the Rabbis Mitzorah Muskul Shiluach, so it's coming to include that even the Mitzorah that's waiting to get clarification on the status of his tzaras, that he also is going to have to leave the city. So Gemara adds, so just the final piece, Ihachi Tiglachas V'Tzipora my time alone. Why do we say that he doesn't have to cut his that he doesn't have to shave his hair, and he doesn't have to bring the birds at the end of the process? Why doesn't he have to do that? So why do we say that we're excluding him? We should be including him to do that also. So Amar Abai, Amar Kra, that what does that mean? Was again only someone whose body was waiting to heal because of needing a refuah from the tzaras. He's the one that's going to have to shave his hair and bring the birds when he's finished with his tzaras period. But we're excluding this one who's not, and we're just waiting for a status update to find out whether or not the rest of the simanim are filling in, to find out whether or not he's a definite mitzorah. Let's start the Mishnah. This is a new Mishnah, new topic. I mean, this is like, I don't know, Zav and Mitzorah are complicated stuff. I find it that way, but I don't know. Anyway, okay. So the Mishnah says, Ein bein tzvarim l'tefillin u'mezuzos, there's no difference between Sfarim, and when it says Sfarim, it's talking about Tanakh, Torah, Nevi'im, and Ksuvim. So when you see a Sefer Torah, there's no difference between the Torah, Nevi'im, and Ksuvim that you're doing it, and if you were writing, let's say, on Tefillin and Mezuzos, which again, they all have to be done on parchment. So the only difference between them is Sfarim, Nechtavim, B'chal Lashon, that a Torah, again, I'm going to say Tanakh, but Sfarim is referring to Tanakh. Tanakh have to be written, can be written in any language, literally any language. Tefillin and mezuzos and nechtav el ashuris, except tefillin and mezuzos can only be written in ashuris, which means one of two things. Either it means Hebrew, that they can only be written in the lashon of Hebrew, and also it's referring to the font. There was an ashuris font, which you can look up what it looks like, but it doesn't. I think the Dead Sea Scrolls, they said, may have this ashuris font in it. So those are the two that. So tefillin and mezuzah can only be written in ashuris. And Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel Omer, Af b'svarim lo hitiru sheyikatzvu el yivanis. Here, Rabbi Gamliel argues and he says that even when it comes to Tanakh, they can't be written in any language. They can be written in Hebrew, obviously, and Greek. And the Gemara is going to explain why they can only be written in Greek. Okay, we will stop here and we will pick up Monday night.